Now we come to the second subtopic relating to the sale of goods, that is the terms of the contract of sale of goods. Terms of the contract bermaksud terma-terma ataupun syarat-syarat kontrak jual beli barang-barang. At the end of this topic, the learning outcomes is that the students will be able to know the two types of terms under the contract of sale of goods. And they can differentiate between these two types of terms, and the student will be able to understand the effects of breaching those terms of contract of sale of goods. There are two kinds of terms under the contract of sale of goods. One is the conditions and the other one is warranties. The first kind of term is condition. Condition is provided under Section 12 Clause 2 of the Sale of Goods Act 1957. It is a stipulation which is essential, menjadi asas ataupun syarat utama to the main purpose of the contract. It is the basic condition or the root of the contract. If the seller breach this condition, the buyer entitled to repudiate or terminate the contract, and the effect of the contract is that the contract becomes void. So this is the example. Let's say the buyer ordered to buy long basmati rice. However, the seller make a mistake and supply long Siamese rice. Here it means that the seller has breached the condition and the buyer entitled to resign the contract. The buyer can reject the goods. If the buyer have paid for the price, the buyer entitled for the refund, because the contract is void due to the fact that the seller has breached the main purpose of the contract. The buyer had requested for basmati rice, but the seller had supplied Siamese rice. So this is totally different from what has been ordered against the main purpose of the contract. The second type of terms is warranties. Warranties is provided under Section 12 Clause 3 of the Sale of Goods Act 1957. Warranty is a stipulation which is only collateral, syarat-syarat sampingan, to the main purpose of the contract. If it is breached by the seller, then the buyer not entitled to terminate the contract, but the buyer entitled for compensation because the contract is not voidable. These conditions and warranties can come in two forms, dalam dua bentuk. One is by express, that is secara jelas dan nyata, which is clearly stated in the agreement, either orally or in writing. Second, by implied, meaning secara termaklum atau tersirat. This can be implied or can be inferred from the conduct of the parties or from the provisions under the Sale of Goods Act 1957. The implied condition, which is provided under the provisions under the SOGA, are also generally known as the implied terms. In conclusion, there are two types of terms under the contract of sale. First one is the conditions, which is essential to the main purpose of the contract. Syarat asas ataupun syarat utama kepada kontrak tersebut. If the condition is breached, the contract is void. The second types of term is the warranties or syarat sampingan. If the seller breached the warranties, the buyer only entitled for damages. The buyer cannot avoid the contract. So these two terms can come in the forms of express or implied, secara nyata atau tersirat.